to Horsefly Chronicles Radio with Julia and Philip Siracusa, sponsored by Carnation, airing live on the United Public Radio Network on 105.3 FM in New Orleans. This show's entrance has been edited, produced, and directed by Gwen Clapper from Perfect Trust Productions, LLC. You can find us at perfecttrustproductions.com.
Hello, everyone, and happy Valentine's Day. Welcome to Monday night segment of Horsefly Chronicles Radio with myself, Julia Siracusa, and Phil Siracusa. We're broadcasting live from the International Public Radio and the United Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 FM from New Orleans. This evening's show is fully sponsored by Carnation, so we want to thank them for their sponsorship. We love them. You will have to do a few things in order to participate. Go over to the YouTube channel, UFO Paranormal Radio or International Public Radio. You can also go into all of the Facebook stations, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, UFO Undercover with Joe Montaldo, News on the Flip Side, Twitch, SoundCloud, Podbeam, and also go over to our group, Horsefly Chronicles Radio, and join if you haven't. If you have any questions for our guests, please ask. Tonight we have an amazing guest. Please welcome Jill Shelley to the show. In 2010, Jill founded St. Croix Paranormal. Her team have traveled to many haunted locations and have been featured on the biography channel My Ghost Story. And in 2018, she purchased the Boyd House in Minnesota. So we're going to be talking a lot about that and this amazing journey that she's been on. So please let's welcome Jill to the show.
Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me, you guys. Good to be here.
Thank you for coming on.
I was listening to a previous podcast that you were on, and it's interesting. You said that your experiences in paranormal started at a young age.
Yeah, pretty much when I was at my grandmother's house, there was a room that they had that none of us kids liked. It was really cold. I always felt like something was staring at you. We just never went in there. I always uneasy. Like I hated that room. And one particular night we were sleeping, there was just my parents were sleeping in the opposite room and it was just myself in one room. I woke up in the middle of the night and I heard these footsteps coming out of that bedroom and my back was towards the door. So I wasn't like facing the door. And you just heard like these footsteps coming, like a pair of boots on wood floor. And it just stopped in front of my door. And then I could feel like this most intense feel, like somebody was almost like with like x-ray eyes, beams going through you. That's almost the feeling that I got. It was so intense. And I was too terrified to turn around, of course. And then and then it turned around and it walked back the other way. And then that was that. And then, I was probably like 8 or 9, something like that. So I was pretty freaked out. So I just kind of put the blankets over my head and just waited till morning. Mentioned it to my parents and they said that they had never gotten up in the middle of the night, which I had heard them snoring too in the next room. So I knew it wasn't them. And I mentioned it to my grandma, who was extremely religious lady. I looked very much up to her. And she's just like, oh my gosh, honey, that's just a ghost. He's not going to hurt you. And then I was like so fascinated ever since there. So I'm like, oh my gosh, if grandma's like, so casual, like, oh, it's just a ghost. I just kind of wanted to know more about them and learn a little bit more of what we could find out. I just kind of got hooked at that point, wanted to find out more information, like who are they? What are they? Just anything I could.
Yeah.
So did you see who it was?
No.
At any point in time?
Nope, never saw who it was. Just always that eerie feeling, And back then I wasn't really knowing about doing paranormal investigating or like how to even communicate with the ghost. At that point in my life as a child, I was more, I was intrigued, but I was also very scared of it. So it's nothing that I went looking for per se. As far as doing any investigating, it wasn't really till the advent of like the TV shows that came out where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can really do this. And, at that point I was, in my, at that point, I think early 30s at that point. So I was like, yeah, I can do this. This is super cool. So
So let me ask you this question, which a lot of people ask me. I'm sure you've been asked this before. So you hear somebody walking up behind you, but you don't see them. And then people would ask me, well, what's the point of a ghost doing that? Why don't they just show you what they look like if they're trying to make you scared or even show you that they're existing there at that point in time? And no one has come up with a logical explanation. Now, we're all paranormal investigators, Julie and I, but, it is a hard question because I always wonder why. If you're going to come up behind me or in front of me, or I feel like you're in the room, right? Because we hear, and even on the recordings, we could hear the EVPs and we know they're there. So why don't they just show us?
I think it just because, in my opinion, I feel that it takes a lot of energy to show yourself in a true like apparition or even a full on like you and I would see each other. So I think these are just maybe more subtle ways of them for you to get their attention, to know that they're there. And again, I feel like just takes a lot of energy to do even that, the footsteps or any type of form of communication. So that's kind of what my theory is on that.
Okay, so your theory is that they have enough energy where you can feel the presence of something, but you can't see them because they're not manifesting completely, because they're not pulling enough out of the, I don't even know, I wouldn't say atmosphere. I know what you're trying to say there.
Right.
All right, well, that kind of makes sense to me because, you do get recordings, right? Are you in the room? And you'll hear maybe yes or something similar to that, and it's coming from absolutely nowhere. So it's nobody else in the room. Do you think that they have limitations of what they can do? Like they're not allowed, for example, on that side to do certain things?
Oh yeah, I totally think so. And it depends also on their energy level, what they're capable of doing. And maybe there's some sort of, and everything's speculation, maybe they have to learn how to do certain things. We don't really know. Everything we know is all basically in theory. So yeah, I think, there is some limitations. I do know just in some of my research, just kind of, I kind of like to talk to them a little bit more about the afterlife. What is it like over there? That kind of situation. And I feel like I get a lot of very limited answers. And I think one of them just kind of pretty much hinted that there's certain things that they're not allowed to talk about. So that's where I kind of agree that there is, again, some limitations as to what they can and can't do.
What's the limited information they're giving you on the afterlife?
Pretty much like anytime I talk about, is there a God? Is there a heaven? Something where it's going in that religious type mode. Pretty much everything shuts down. I did actually was at a rectory where there was a priest who actually had committed suicide. And he was using like a K2 meter to talk to us. So like if he touched it, the answer was yes. If he didn't, the answer was no. He did say he was sorry for committing suicide. He wished he had not done that. But I started asking him about heaven and God. And I think I just said, if you touch this, is there a God? And it didn't do anything. And I said, so you're saying there's no God? And then it didn't do anything either. I'm like, can you not talk about any of this? And then it just went all the way to the red, kept going all the way to the red. So, and I also, so that was kind of indication for me. And like I said, a lot of times when I do ask, heaven and God and questions like that, I think I get a lot of shutdown. Like everything kind of talks.
That's interesting that you say that because past investigations that we've had here at our own home with psychics working on the case, there's limited information that they would give.
Yeah.
And that didn't change. Every single piece of information throughout all the teams that have been here. There's always that limitation where they can't go further.
Mm-hmm.
It's either someone stopping them. We have heard through EVPs that the bandman's coming, like they're being stopped from talking. And then people who've tried Ouija board sessions have gotten pains, like they feel like they're being stabbed in the back, and they were being stopped at certain questions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. I think then there's limitations on what they can say. It's not too far off from the physical realm in one sense, because it's like, don't say that, shut your mouth,
Yeah.
or we're going to get you, meaning that other spirit. Fascinating.
Now, tell us about your team. How did you guys all come together?
Well, actually, I started the team with a guy I used to work with. He's no longer with us. But then there was kind of just branched out talking to people at work. There was another guy who was like, oh my gosh, my sister-in-law is totally into it. So that's Donna. She's one of our greatest paranormal investigators that we have. And we actually met in a graveyard for the first time. So we had talked on the phone. I'm like, well, let's just meet at a graveyard and see how things go. And so we've been together ever since. And that was in 2010.
Wow. That's really cool, actually.
Yeah. And then Teresa came through again. Steve, who I started with, he is a friend of his. And she had been with part of another group that no longer was doing investigating. So she's looking to get back into it. And so we hit it off, and we're still like best friends to this day. And Alex just found us when we on the internet, just searching for local places to do. And then we had Stephanie with us too. And she was another gal that I worked with. So yeah, we kind of formed a little family there, actually. So we've been together for a pretty long time.
That's really great. And you guys have been all over the country, correct? Doing locations and investigating.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We've traveled from, one end to the other of places that we could go. I think Ohio has been our farthest since we have to drive everywhere and haul all our equipment. It'd be super nice if we could fly, but we can't. So yeah, we've been to so many places, just a lot of good history with, just like the Peoria Asylum. We've done Waverly, Banner, just pretty Villiscax murder. So yeah, pretty much of the big name ones, and a lot of places that people just kind of, I don't want to call underground, but maybe the well less known places, but more known in the paranormal community places we've been to.
And what is there one that that you guys really got scared about, anyone that really left a mark on you guys?
Well, we always go back to Whispers Estate in Mitchell, Indiana. That tends to be our most negative place that we actually had investigated. They actually have a lot of negative energy at the house. There was a doctor who did a lot of unethical things with his female patients. They buried body parts in the backyard. He did a mercy killing on his daughter. She got injured in a fire, and then he overdosed her with morphine to put her out of her misery. They had a little boy fall down the stairs and die. And then when they had a really crabby man who does a lot of the negative stuff, he dropped dead of a heart attack in front of his closet the day he retired. So he's really, really crabby. So from the get-go from that place, it was just constant cobwebs on our face. Like, we're all just doing this all night long. Everybody just constantly would not stop. Steve even had to go outside. He couldn't take it. It was on the back of his neck all night. It was just like beating on him. So we just kind of had that. We saw some wet footprints coming up from the basement leading to outside. It was just negative. And then we were up in the closet where the man had died, and they also said that, people get scratched, just a lot of negative. People even get locked in that closet, which is like one of those that kind of go up and lock over. So they don't even know how that's even happening. So of course, we're hanging out in the closet. And when I say it's a closet, it's like a big walk-in, so there's like a chair, there's even a little table in there. So it's a big walk-in closet. Teresa was sitting on a chair. I was way in the back corner, and I got this voice in my head. It was like a male voice, and it said, "Get out of this closet."
Wow.
So I decided I'm going to get out, but I also have a fear of being in closets because I always think the door's going to shut on me and I can't get out. So that's like a big fear of mine. So I thought, well, okay, it's just me being, I don't want to be in the closet. And Teresa remained in the closet. We also got on the spirit box at that point. It said, shut this door. And we didn't do that either. And so the next thing you know, Teresa comes flying out on that chair. So she flew about 4 feet out and landed on her hands and knees. And she just said somebody picked up that chair and then they just pushed her right off that chair. So that was probably one of the scariest things that we had. And we vowed that we would never coming back to that place. But about 4 years after that, I did go back. Teresa wouldn't go. She said, nope, I got thrown out. I'm not going back. So we didn't get quite the same energy. And I don't, and that varies from, place to place anyway and day to day. So I don't know if it would have been different if we got Teresa back. It would be interesting to go back with her. But unfortunately, I don't think we'll ever get her back in there. So
it's funny. It's people think because you're a paranormal investigator, you don't get scared. And it's completely untrue.
Right. Yeah.
It's scary. I mean, we're only human.
Right. And especially, and that was a big scare. I mean, we call her the paranormal punching bag because she gets scratched and pushed all the time. It's just I don't know. It just must be her aura. But that was probably like the biggest thing she's ever had done to her. So that, because a lot of times she gets scratched or something. She just, you brush it off, you go back in. But being pushed and physically, it's just something she's never going to forget.
Yeah. Creepy.
As far as equipment, what do you like the best that gives you the most validating evidence?
For me, I love the spirit box or any form of the spirit box, the portal, any of that stuff, because I absolutely love the science behind it. Basically for it to sweep through one end of the station to the other. Our group personally uses AM just because it takes out a lot more of that music type situation, a lot of the talking. But scientifically knowing you can't speak 1/100th of a second. So we've gotten full sentences, which are exact responses to our questions. We've gotten swear words, which we know we're not going to hear that on the radio. And I'm talking clear where you're not like going, oh, it sounds like, so they're clear.
Yeah.
So that's like my favorite piece of equipment because I am just so happy when I get stuff off the spirit box. Yeah, it's just amazing.
And when you leave a location, do you ask the spirits to stay behind, or that's automatic where you think they won't follow you home?
I know I always do. So we each kind of do our own little thing. Just kind of say our own little prayers. I usually just ask them to stay. They're not welcome. Thanks for all the interaction, that kind of thing. So that's something I say. So each of us do our own thing. I do know a couple times that they were a little laxed on that, and they did have some activity at their house. I know Teresa had some banging on her doors, her bathroom doors, and somebody jingling the knob, which that had never happened in her house. Her house isn't haunted. And then Donna also had, she actually awoke and saw like a cowboy standing at the end of her bed one day. So she just kind of told him to leave, and then that was that. And then the biggest one, I think Alex had one too. And they lived in an apartment. So, and again, never had activity before in their whole place. And their dog would start just randomly barking, like looking in there, barking. Their faucets in the bathroom were turning on and off and in the kitchen, and that had never happened before either. So I think that they've gotten a little bit better about saying something when we go. But yeah, so a few times when you forgot, they did have a little activity.
And how do you get, like, they just leave?
I think they just basically told them that they weren't welcome here, to go back where they came from. They enjoyed that. Seemed to work. I suppose we would have to develop into more type situations if they were to linger around. So our team is not experienced as far as getting rid of ghosts or sending them. We're more about proving that they're there and possibly who they are, what they're there for. But as far as, sending them to the other side, that's beyond our expertise. So that was something we would have to refer to somebody about.
Okay.
Now let's get into the Boyd house a little bit. You have a documentary that we've seen. It was really good.
Very good.
And I remember you talking in there about the drawers opening up and the walk-in.
The cabinets.
Do you think that whoever was there and died there or on that land or around that land is still in that time frame of existence and this is why you hear certain things? Or do you think it's live, active, like they can hear and talk to you simultaneously between worlds?
Oh, I know definitely, at least in at the Boyd house. I just have evidence that they are actually interacting with me at that particular time and moment. They can tell me what I'm wearing. We've done like a Estes method when I'm yawning, and they're like, "Hey, don't yawn." So they're actually interacting with what I'm doing. We've gotten in EVPs that have interacted with what I'm doing, not only at the Boyd house but at other places too. I think one of my favorite EVPs was at Randolph County Infirmary we were at, and we were just walking down the hallway, and the only people investigating that night were me and Teresa. And we actually got an EVP that said, as we're walking down a hall, unfortunately we didn't hear it at the time, but it just said, "Come on in, girls, pleased to meet you." So,
Wow.
like, and then I think we were down in the basement too, and they've had, I think, 2 or 3 fires at one point back in the day. And we had like an old man's gruff voice saying, "The building's on fire, don't you know?" Like, so then now was he reliving back in the day because the building is on fire and he sees these girls walking through? So I think it can go both ways, honestly.
And can you give us like just a little bit about the history of what happened there?
At the Boyd house?
Yes.
Yeah, so we just, like, the deed for itself goes back to 1889. So the land was owned by the St. Louis Minneapolis Railroad. So back in the day, Boyd became like a big, wild, booming West town. The house was actually right on the corner, right on the edge of town. So there used to be a livery stable across the street from it. And then all the town was surrounding it. So you can just imagine, we have pictures all of the old days where they have the horses and the wagons, just like you'd see in the old cowboy movies. And then the Sioux Dakota reservation line just butted up right against the edge of town. So I'm sure there was a lot of happenings and deaths and things that you're not going to find history-wise. But what we do know, so the house itself was built in 1901. And then we do have some history of a family living there before, but I haven't found anything real sequential about them. So the most I know is in 1912 is the Eckert family had moved in there, and they stayed there till 1958. And then Fred Eckert was a very big, well-known businessman in town, and so he owned like a fancy dry goods store. So they sold, anything from fur coats, shoes, food, just kind of, you name it, they sold it. And then he became part of the school board. He and his father and his other brother built one of the Lutheran churches in town, part on the fire department. So he was a very well-rounded, respected businessman in town. He passed away in the home, and then his wife also passed away in the home, and her funeral was also held in the home. We had like 3 big bay windows like they do back in the day where they'd always put the coffins. So her funeral was held in the home. 2 of her children passed away in the home, one in infancy and one when he was about, I believe he was like 4, and he choked to death. So he died. And then we also have a lady in the 70s who died now. So everybody's, other than the little boy, has died of natural causes that we know of. I have a psychic had said too that there's a couple people that died of tuberculosis, but you won't find a record of that. But we do get a lot of different names and information of that come through that I can't tie to any of the deeds or any information. So I don't know if they're passerbyers or what. The railroad track runs right outside the back of the yard too, so we could get a lot of energy from that. So that's pretty much what we have for the history, but we do have a lot of evidence of the Eckert family still being there.
Wow.
How many people in the family?
There was, I believe, 4 that survived. 4 that survived, and then 2 of the children that had died there. And I believe they had 2 other children when they lived in Iowa, but that was before they moved up to Boyd, and those children had passed away as well.
Okay.
So you believe people are there from that family, and the question is, why? Why do they choose not to move on? Is it because of free will? Is it because we want them to communicate with us because we're there and we're using part of our energy to pick up residual energy? Or is it because they can come back and forth from a higher vibration, a higher energy place to that location when asked upon. For example, when someone's sick in the hospital and you pray to whoever you pray to for that person to get better and heal, the higher spirit comes / angel at that current time. Sometimes your prayers are answered. Is it similar to that, using our energy and intention to communicate with the spirit? Or is it that the spirit is always there and the spirit's been caught on maybe a surveillance camera or some kind of recording device when no one is at the location?
I think it's that combination of all of the above. And I don't think anyone really knows the true answer of why are the spirits here, whether they come and go, whether they choose to stay. I think we have a combination of all of it. Some can, some can't. Do we really know? No. Again, I think everything a lot is in theory. When it comes to the Boyd house, I feel like they stay because they have a very strong attachment to that home, a very strong attachment to that community, and just the love of it. And so I feel like maybe Minnie stayed around when she passed away because she was waiting for Fred. She passed first. Maybe when he passed, they're like, hey, let's just stay here. Who knows?
Yeah.
So I think it just depends on the place, the situation. I mean, every spirit who has died has it been a tragic death? Was it a suicide? Was it just old age and it was your time? So I think that also creates a lot of differentials on how that spirit's going to be. Whether it's that stuck, come, go, unfinished business. I think there's just a lot of factors involved. I don't think there's one definite answer.
Have you come across any spirit in the house that's not nice?
No, not that hasn't been nice. I heard that Fred can get a little pushy back sometimes when he's done with you, when he's kind of like had enough.
Yeah.
But never anything evil.
Okay.
Nothing on that. We do have in the home, though, a ton of antiques. We've had some things that are supposedly haunted that we purchased. I cannot verify whether they are or not. But we've purchased things like that and put that in the home as well.
Have you ever made an offering to the spirits of the location as an appeasement of, we coexist together somehow, where you said 1950s and before, so maybe making something from that time and era, dressing up in that time and era to show the other side that you just want to validate and communicate?
Yeah, I do a lot of trigger objects, and especially like at Boyd too. I always ask them like, "What do you want?" You just let me know, and if I hear something on the spirit box, or maybe even if a psychic tells me something, I'll just go and I'll do it. So I do that. We have dressed up in time period at other locations, whether it's a doctor or nurse. We've even gotten jail outfits. So we've played that time period piece as well. So yeah, we kind of feel like that's just a trigger object, and I think it helps in some situations.
Yeah, we've had on previous, I think it was the Hinsdale house. They said that people dressed up back in the day, and it does help.
Yeah.
It's interesting too. I mean,
give us like a really good EVP that you got.
Yeah, like give us like one of the most credible EVPs that you didn't have to make out what it said. You knew exactly, like everyone could hear
it. We got the very interesting enough to the very first public place that we did. As far as going to a real haunted location that that you have to pay for was Villisca Axe Murder House. And we probably had 5 or 6 Class A EVPs from those children. And even having a conversation with each other was the first time I've ever got an EVP of 2 spirits talking to each other. So we had the 2 little girls. One said, "Do you want to play?" And the other one said, "No way." And they were all Class A. We were putting out, all kinds of toys, all kinds of stuff. We got an EVP, a little boy that said, "I want to touch your things." We walked in, we said, "Is anyone home?" We heard, "We're right here." And then what was the other one? We had another one that was really good that I can't think of, but yeah, we just had some really good class EVPs. Like you didn't have to tweak them out. You didn't have to do anything. They were just like, boom, they were right there. So
The best.
that was like, just amazing. We had gone in there with the attitude of we weren't going to talk about what happened at all. We were just going to play. And so I think maybe that's why we got some really good interaction that night. Because we never once talked about the murders or death, because we felt, everybody does it and you don't want to rehash it, and especially children. So we just brought toys and we played games and we had a lot of fun.
That's good.
Did you ever try to go in the house with friends or
The Boyd house?
the Boyd house with people and not try to interact, but just try to, just do what you do in normal day life, like go there and have tea or coffee or just amongst yourselves, and then ironically something happens that you can't explain, instead of trying to have something happen?
Yeah, a lot of times when I go there, I doing a lot of cleaning, a lot of maintenance work. So I really don't have time to be investigating. Like usually I will whip on a voice recorder and just leave it running, because you just never know when you're going to get a voice. But for them, there'll be times where I'm just cleaning and something happens, like someone will tug the back of my shirt, we'll hear a loud bang, or a door will open or something. And then I'm like, hey, usually I'm just like, you guys, I'm kind of busy right now. Can we do this later? I promise I'll play later. That kind of stuff. So then I kind of feel like when later comes, when I do have time to do it, then they don't want to interact. So I try, so it's like, I feel bad that I'm brushing them off, but I got to get the work done too. So
They'd be like, can you help me clean?
yeah, I know. If I could get them to do that, that would be great.
That's interesting. I've heard that before, where you just tell them, "Hey, I'm busy right now," and if they're friendly and they listen.
Yeah, and I know my husband. We weren't even investigating, but he was carrying stuff in, and he was coming in through the front door, and he had this box full of stuff, and he just looked up at the top of the stairwell, and he's like, there was a woman standing there, long brown hair. She was wearing white. And she was there and she was gone. He's like, for a second, I thought it was you, but then she's gone. So, again, not investigating, not intending on doing anything. And he actually saw an apparition, which I was really jealous of, because I haven't actually seen a full-blown apparition. I've seen shadows, but not apparitions. So I was really bummed that he got to see one and I didn't.
At the Boyd house, has there ever been a picture capturing a full manifestation?
We haven't had a picture. We've had a lot of people see shadows, or see a little boy, see a man, which has been a real common occurrence. We do have somebody that did catch the two shadow figures going through the kitchen. And so you could see like two perfectly shaped human people, really, but the shadows going really fast, like one and then the other one. So one looked a little taller than the other one as it went by. And then the way they have the camera set up, and I know how the house is, it wasn't any reflection from cars going by. The windows aren't even anywhere in the vicinity of that. So that was a really amazing piece of footage that they caught.
Are these shadows that are seen through the visual of straight on, or through the corner of the eye?
I think most people have seen, I would have to say it's out of the corner of their eye. A lot of them will see it on the stairwell. We get even the REM pods will go off quite often on the stairwell. People hear footsteps coming down the stairwell. So a lot of times people sit in the parlor, because you can see part of the stairwell, and they'll say they see a lot of times somebody peeking through, or a shadow peeking through. So I guess I wouldn't say it's direct on. I would say more of the catcher corner of the eye. I do know my teammate and I actually, I was in the kitchen. I was actually on the phone talking to my husband. She was in the parlor, the living room, and just kind of, digging through a bag, looking for stuff. And she looked up and she said she saw this head peeking out through the parlor, which is down by the stairwell. Said almost like it was kind of doing this, seeing what was going on. And then she's like, shadow in the kitchen. And then she goes, it disappeared. And I'm like, what's going on? So, I didn't see anything, but yeah, she saw something peeking through the door. So I think a lot of people see the shadows.
Do you notice how there's so much activity near there's staircases?
Yes.
We have that here too, and it's just wild.
Yeah, and this is the old double staircase, so you can go up one side or the other side, and then it meets in the middle. So I think
nice.
I don't know if they had maids or anything, because one entrance will take you into the parlor, and one entrance will take you into the living room. But from what I found out, what I call the living room was actually their dining room, and what I call the parlor was kind of like their living room.
Okay.
But either way, you have stairwell that lead into either way. That way, so leads me to believe that they may have had maids at some point. Certainly they were wealthy enough that they could have totally afforded it.
Yeah, definitely.
Fascinating. As a paranormal investigator and as a young child having the experience that you have, what do you believe? Not your equipment or your teammates, but what do you personally believe when we die? Where do we go?
I started this because I was afraid to die. And to myself, I've proven that there is another side. And now we're just kind of developing, how many sides are there, learning that kind of thing. I personally believe that there is a heaven, and that would only be, would be my faith, for one. But I just, side stories, my uncle had passed away, and he had told my aunt that he came back. She saw him for like 3 days right after he died. She'd just come down and he'd be sitting in his chair. And
Wow.
he only appeared for 3 days, and that was it. But he did say there was a heaven and it was beautiful. And so that was kind of I was like, oh my God, that's really amazing. My mother, when she passed away, very, very religious woman. And I remember I asked her, I said, hey, when you die, you got to just let me know. You got to let me know. Is there another side? Of course, she jokes. She goes, well, if I'm not in purgatory, I don't want to get stuck in purgatory. So we'll see what I can do for you. But then my daughter, like a couple days after, and my daughter never asked my mother this, but a couple days afterwards, my daughter had a dream. She's like, hey, grandma came to me in my dream. It was so real, blah, blah, blah. She kind of went into things. She goes, but she wanted me to tell you the answer is yes. She goes, I don't know what that means, but she wanted me to tell you that.
Oh, that's so nice.
So I was just like, oh my God, that's gotta be it. So that's probably, some more validation of why I believe that we do go to heaven.
Yes.
And so you believe in heaven, and then you believe that certain spirits, through investigating, then are earthbound, right? They're here, right? Or can they be in the same heaven and at the location at the same time?
That, I guess, again, nobody can answer, but you hear so many stories where people say, my mom appeared to me, or my uncle, or somebody they knew, came down, but they had never had experiences before. So I don't know, maybe when you're really lost yourself, maybe that's when they get a special grant down to come guide you, per se. That could be for that. So it's all in theory, but that goes back to, can they come and go, stay? Why are you here? So it kind of goes back to that again. So I think it's just a higher power. We're just never going to know. And I don't think any of us will ever have the answers, but I just embrace what I can get to know.
And everything that you learn just ends up with more questions, right?
Right.
More questions and more questions.
Exactly. It just never ends.
Yeah, we know that it's true that ghosts do exist.
Yeah.
But there's always more questions of, we want all these answers, because then, I'm a believer in reincarnation. And then I would say, well, if a person died 1920 and they're at this haunted location because paranormal teams are picking them up, does that mean they're never reincarnated? Or they're just stuck there? Or does it mean that we've had people on our show that believe that the soul's energy, as of right now, the way we're speaking to you, we exist on multiple levels right now at this current time, just that we cannot perceive it, which means that we're somewhere else at the same exact time that we're here. Again, it's boxed into our thoughts, but a lot of investigators I've spoken to previously have believed that It blows your mind. It kind of goes to the theory of everything. We're all energy. We cannot be created nor destroyed, and neither do we exist because we only exist through the subconscious mind. We create the world around us.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah. It's like you said, it's just mind blowing, and there's just so many different aspects on so many different levels that I don't think you can grasp all of it, honestly.
Let's talk about so you have a ghost experience. You have the Boyd house. Do you believe in aliens?
I'm not sure. I find the subject very fascinating. I don't know. It's like, but we've had a lot of people that had different experiences. We talked with, and I don't remember their names, but they were the guys, the original. My husband would know better because he's a bigger fan. But we were at a paranormal convention this year in Iowa, and the guys from the movie Fire in the Sky, the actual guys the movie was based on, were down there. So he had a really long conversation with them. So it was really interesting to hear. So I think they are out there. I just haven't had really a lot of experience with it. It's fascinating, that's for sure.
Definitely is.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. So where can people, like, if they want to book this Boyd house, how do they do that?
Yeah, you can find us on Facebook under Boyd House, or we actually just got a website up and running now, so that's boydhouse217.com. And then or you can shoot us an email at boydhouse217@yahoo.com. And just give us a date request, and then we can get something scheduled up for you to come spend the night there.
Ooh.
And can they bring equipment of their own?
Yeah, totally. We're a fully functioning house. So we have heat, we have electric, we have window air units in the summertime. We have a microwave, a pizza maker, refrigerator. We offer a coffee station now, so people are pretty happy about that. So yeah, pretty fully functioning. So it's $200 for the night, and you can bring up to 8 people. Any of your equipment, you have the house fully to yourself.
Wow.
We let you have it from 3 p.m. till noon the next day. So we give you quite a bit of investigation time.
That's really good.
That's good.
Definitely.
I like that. What's on your bucket list?
Oh yeah.
Like, where do you want to go investigate next?
Well, we do have 5 trips booked this year, but my bucket list is the old South Pittsburgh Hospital in Tennessee. I totally really want to go there. So it's just such a long drive. We'd probably have to take a whole week off to do it. So
everything is
maybe next year.
Everything's so far away.
It is. It
crazy.
is.
Haunted hospitals are unique. We watch a lot of these episodes on television, and there's documentaries, and it's interesting because you could swear they're talking to the patient that died there.
Yep.
In some of these, they're getting the EVPs, the electric chair, and some of these prisons, and then the hospitals, they were injected with stuff. And I remember going to St. Albans in Virginia, and that place is active. I don't know if you've ever been there, but the equipment's still there, the chairs are still there, the beds are still there.
Yep.
And it is you don't go home disappointed at some of these locations, and you have to ask yourself, why is that person still there, if it is that person? And that would lead me to a question for yourself: is do you think that sometimes these things mimic, and it's really not who you think it is?
Oh, I would for sure say so. I wouldn't think as much as far as like a hospital type situation. I feel like that would be a patient or somebody who passed away. I feel like maybe a lot more of what you're talking about with the mimicking of something else. I feel like that would be more in a private residential type situation, because they're gonna want to feed off more on that person and take over that person more, versus in what you're gonna find floating around any asylum or anything like that. But that's just kind of my personal opinion.
It's true, though. I would agree with that, definitely. We've had that here, the mimicking. That's probably like the worst thing in the world. I hate that.
Have you ever had people in your dreams that you've never seen before in the physical world?
No, not that I can recall. Nothing paranormal type dreams. For some reason, I have a lot of dreams about drowning and falling off of bridges. So I don't like those.
Yeah, that's not a good dream.
What advice do you have for like young kids and young adults that are really venturing into the paranormal, because so many of them are?
But I guess my number one thing when people ask me that is you want to give a lot of respect to the deceased, because they are just like you and I, they're just not in a physical form. So a lot of those people I feel like who are just like, show yourself. I mean, I'm not going to come out and show myself if you're yelling at me. So just a lot of respect. And that goes for the fact that because they can hurt you if you're dealing with somebody crabby, they can do something to you. So again, just respect all the way around.
And never go alone.
Yes.
You really should never go alone.
Yeah, we've done that before where we like even just split up in different areas, and I get so uncomfortable. I do not like it. Because I guess I just feel so vulnerable.
Yeah.
I just not a good idea.
The SLS camera. I've
Ooh,
seen
I love
that. What's your thoughts on that?
I think you gotta just take it with a grain of salt too when you're looking at that, because you need to decide, is it, because I've seen it like act like somebody's there and it's like, well, it's really actually mapping my TV tray, So I mean, you really got to kind of look at what type of what it's doing and what is in the background, what's your situation. I have had some at the Boyd House where we've actually had a stick figure and they were actually tapping to the beat of the music. And they were actually tall, so it wasn't like this little figure or anything like that. It was probably somebody who was like, almost 6 foot tall and tapping to the beat of music. Then they sat in the chair and you could see the legs being crossed and tapping to the beat. And then we had been playing the Victrola, and I take the crank out because it's a very old Victrola. I don't like people messing with it. I don't want them to break it. So when I'm not there, but we had left the camera running on the Victrola, and I went back to go get something. All of a sudden I looked and there's this stick figure standing in front of the Victrola, and it was going like this and then back. Like it was looking like, where's the crank, and like trying to figure out how to make this record play. It was just the craziest thing.
That's interesting.
Wow.
Have you ever stayed at a haunted location by yourself? Or if you didn't, would you?
I haven't stayed anywhere by myself other than the Boyd House. And then those days I usually tell them to keep it low key because I'm by myself. But no, I don't think I could be brave enough to do any other well-known haunted location, just because I don't know the spirits that well, and it's just creepy. So I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could.
What's your thoughts?
Couldn't do it either.
What's your thoughts on demons? Do you believe or you don't believe?
Oh, they're out there, but they're rare. It's not like how Hollywood makes it out. But there definitely is. There is evil. There's also what some people would classify as evil, which could just be a grumpy old person.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the true rare demonic, it's there, but you're not going to find it that often.
Has anyone ever gotten oppressed? Any of your teammates at any location?
I did once myself. We were at Farrar Elementary, and they do have, I think it's the principal. He's kind of more of a negative, heavier energy. And I didn't realize I was doing this, but when we were up on the 3rd floor, there's no power, and the K2 was going crazy. We were getting interaction, and one of my teammates came by, and I literally started screaming at him, like, why are you up here? And they're just like freaking out. And he's like, oh, okay. And he left. And then like we're walking down the hall, and the girls are like, geez, Jill's being a big B, but that's not my attitude. That's not how I'm like. That's not how I act. That's not how I behave. When I watched the film footage back, I had no recollection of any of this happening.
Wow.
So I had to call them and apologize and say, hey, I said, you guys should have took me out of there, because I don't act like that. So it was totally inappropriate, just yelling and screaming at people and just being very angry. And I have no recollection of even doing that. So
Were you
I
okay when
would
you got out? Were you
What's
okay when you got out? Were you okay when you got out? Like, were you
Oh, yeah.
different? Did you feel different?
Yeah, at that time, at that time I was smoking, and so we took a smoke break, and I think that everything kind of resumed back to normal after that. But
You
just
couldn't remember.
I didn't remember anything, and nobody said anything because then I was just back to my old this self, after that. So they probably just didn't, think anything. But when I watched the film footage back, seeing all this, it's like, oh my gosh, that's totally not me.
Well, that goes to show you and everyone, the listener out there, that the power, now I know this to be true, that the power of an energy from the other side that you cannot see and you don't know what you're dealing with, it's always good to respect.
Yeah.
You want to validate, appreciate, because you don't know who you're talking to or what, and it can be a negative entity. They are rare, but it can be, and they could also take your body over very, very quickly. And I've seen that multiple times.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen to atheists. So it does exist. It is true, and you have to be careful of the words that you shed because these things can be malevolent. Again, it's rare, but it does happen. And just because we look at a watch and say, well, it's over now, it'll never come back. I challenge you to watch the movie, if you haven't, or documentary Emily Rose. There's a lot of questions on that, but when you see how this young, beautiful girl, the innocence and how she was taken over, and whether or not the medications had any effect on it, of her demise, I truly believe from hearing the recordings that the movie had played, that it's authentic, it's real, and that there are similar cases, such as The Exorcist and the Amityville Horror, where people can get taken over and inflict harm on other people. So for the new paranormal investigators or those that want to challenge the other side, you're walking on delicate waters. It's all good for the fear factor of I want to see, I want to hear, like a roller coaster ride when you get to the top and you can't wait to drop, going down really quick. But you must be careful because I always say that it's similar to like a fireman or a police officer, or even someone in the military. You don't know what you're walking into, so you got to be very, very careful. And you could have 10 people around you, and I've seen people fall very quick at certain locations, one after the other. So I realize that power on the other side is a lot more than we have here in the physical realm. It's better to respect that side and walk and just be careful what you say, and just say, I want to communicate. And you don't challenge or provoke. Provoking is the worst thing you can do. And I've heard cases where people a year later, just because we make up time, there is no time on that side. A year later, people, car accidents, heart attacks, when they provoked and challenged demonic entities and things that they could not see. And the Ouija board, again, the Ouija board is just another tool. But if you have enough intention and you provoke it, you have to be careful because you don't know what comes through. Having said that, this has been a great show, a lot of knowledge. Where can people find you and what do you have going on?
Again, just at boydhouse217.com or at boydhouse217@yahoo.com. Right now we're running a March special. So we're doing $150 a night if you stay in March, or you can do 2 nights for $250 a night. So a lot of our Saturdays are filled already, but we have other days of the week available if people are interested in that. So we're just kind of doing that special, kicking that off right now.
Thank you so much for coming on Horsefly Chronicles Radio.
Thank you, Jill. We really
Thank you to all
appreciate
our listeners out there. We really appreciate you. And we will catch you next week
Thank you so much,
at
Jill,
the same
for coming
time.
on
Have a
tonight.
great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Jill.
Oh, wait, we have to close the show. Sorry about that.
We want a special thank you to Carnation.
Yeah, we cannot
sponsor.
forget about Carnation. Wasn't for them,
there'd be no show.
There'll be no show.
So thank you so much, and catch us next Monday night on the United Public Radio Network on 105.3 FM from New Orleans. And stay tuned for Trisha Mo with The Missing Piece. Yay. All right, guys.
Looking forward to listening to that. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you, Jill.
Thanks. Good night.
Night.